Okay, so today we're diving into something that I know a lot of people are really interested in, and that's how to manage high blood sugar naturally.
Yeah.
We're talking hyperglycemia here.
Right.
And, you sent me a bunch of research on this,
Yeah.
looking at, the impact of diet and lifestyle, even some supplements
Yep.
on keeping those blood sugar levels balanced,
For sure.
which is, obviously a big deal when we're talking about things like diabetes.
Absolutely.
And, of course, medical interventions are often totally necessary.
Right.
But what's really cool is that there's all this potential with these natural strategies.
There is. Yeah.
And so we're going to kind of go through all this stuff that you sent
Okay.
and figure out what's really the most important information here
Sounds good.
for everyone listening.
Yeah. So I think to really understand how these natural approaches actually work,
Okay.
it might help to just sort of back up for a second
Okay.
and just remember what's going on in the body when your blood sugar is high.
So when we eat, foods with carbs,
Yeah.
our body breaks them down into glucose.
Right.
And glucose is like the main fuel that our bodies run on, right?
Yeah.
It's our energy.
Yeah.
And then insulin, which is a hormone made in the pancreas,
Right.
it acts like a key
Okay.
to let that glucose from our blood into our cells,
Okay.
where it can be used for energy.
Gotcha.
So when you have high blood sugar, it basically means your cells aren't responding to insulin as well as they should.
So they're kind of like,
Yeah, it's called insulin resistance.
okay.
Or your pancreas isn't making enough insulin in the first place.
Okay.
And so as a result, the glucose, it starts to build up in the blood.
Right. Yeah. So it's just kind of like hanging out there,
Exactly.
not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
And one of the experts, you sent some info from Dr. Sarah Reynolds. She's
Yeah.
an endocrinologist. She had a really good way of putting this.
What did you say? She said, while our genes do play a role in how we process glucose, the impact of our daily lifestyle choices is truly significant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so true. It's like, we might have this predisposition,
Yeah.
but what we do every single day really, really makes a difference.
It's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what's so exciting is that there's more and more evidence coming out to actually support these lifestyle changes.
Okay.
And like you said, you want to really get into the specifics
Yes, let's do it.
of these natural strategies that you've been researching.
Yeah.
So we're talking diet, physical activity, managing stress, sleep,
Right.
even specific supplements.
Yeah.
And we really want to pull out those actionable insights.
Yeah. That you can actually use.
Right.
I love it.
Okay.
So where should we start?
Well, let's start with diet.
Okay.
Because it seems like from all the material you sent me, like
Yeah.
diet is like the foundation.
Jeff,
It's like the absolute most important thing
it really is.
when it comes to managing blood sugar. And all the research backs that up.
It does.
It shows that changing what you eat can really lead to some big improvements.
Yeah, for sure.
So a big part of managing your diet for blood sugar is understanding the glycemic index,
Okay.
or GI for short.
Okay.
So low GI foods are really important here.
Okay.
Basically, these are foods that release glucose into your bloodstream really slowly.
Okay.
So it's nice and steady after you eat.
Gotcha.
And that's really good because it doesn't put as much stress on your pancreas
Yeah.
and your whole insulin system.
So it's not like a sudden shock to the system.
Right,
It's
exactly.
like a nice gradual.
It's like a slow and steady release.
I like that.
So by choosing those low GI foods,
Yeah.
you're basically teaching your body to handle glucose better over time.
Yeah.
It's not just about avoiding those sugar spikes.
Right.
It's about creating a more stable environment.
Yeah. So instead of those ups and downs that you get when you eat like a really sugary snack or something,
Yeah, or something super processed.
you're getting like a much smoother release of energy.
Yeah, exactly. A more sustained release.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of these low GI foods that I should be looking out for?
So think about things like legumes,
Mhm.
like lentils and beans and chickpeas.
Yeah.
Most non-starchy vegetables,
Okay.
like broccoli, spinach, bell peppers,
Yeah.
and then whole intact grains,
Okay.
like oats, quinoa,
Gotcha.
as opposed to refined carbs, like
Right.
white bread, sugary cereals, things like
Those are the things that are going to spike you up.
that. Exactly.
Oh.
And actually, one of the experts you mentioned, Dr. Michael Chen, who's a nutritional biochemist,
Mhm.
he specifically recommends focusing on these low GI foods.
It does.
He does. And there's a really interesting study
Okay.
that was published in JAMA,
Okay.
and they found that people who ate a low GI diet actually had reductions in their HbA1c levels.
Okay, so for people who don't know what that is, can you just explain?
Yeah, so HbA1c, it's basically like your average blood sugar level over the past few months.
Gotcha. So it's like a report card for your blood sugar.
I like that.
And what's really interesting is that the reductions in HbA1c in this study,
Yeah.
they were comparable to what you might see with some medications,
Really?
but without the side effects.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big deal because lowering HbA1c,
Yeah.
it can actually really reduce your risk of long-term complications from high blood sugar.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So these dietary findings are pretty significant.
Yeah, it's like food is medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I love.
That's powerful stuff.
Okay, so we've talked about like specific low GI foods.
Right.
But it's not just about individual foods, right?
It's not.
It seems like there are also like whole dietary patterns.
Yeah.
Like the Mediterranean diet.
Yes.
That can be really beneficial for blood sugar control.
The Mediterranean diet is so good for you in so many ways.
Really is.
And blood sugar is no exception.
Yeah.
You know, one of the experts you mentioned, Dr. Elena Vasquez,
Yes.
who's a diabetes specialist.
Right.
She called it a perfect storm for improving insulin sensitivity.
A perfect storm.
A perfect storm.
I like that.
Because it's got all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Healthy fats from things like olive oil and nuts.
Yeah.
Lean proteins like fish and poultry.
Yep.
And of course, those complex carbs we were just talking about.
Yes.
Plus tons of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah. And it seems like it's the combination
It is.
of all those things.
Yeah, it's like they all work together
Right.
to keep your blood sugar happy.
Yeah, I love it.
And the research is pretty convincing.
Okay, tell me about it.
So you sent me a systematic review,
Mm-hmm.
which basically looked at 17 different studies
Wow.
on the Mediterranean diet.
Okay.
And they found that people who followed this diet consistently,
Yeah.
they had a 23% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow. That's huge.
Yeah, and for people who already had type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
they saw some really good improvements in their blood sugar control.
That's incredible.
So that's from changing how they eat. That is amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, so focusing on low GI foods
Mm,
and trying to eat more of a Mediterranean style diet.
right.
That's like a really great place to start.
For sure.
Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about intermittent fasting,
Okay.
which is something that I know a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, it's been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And there's actually some really interesting science behind it
Okay.
when it comes to blood sugar.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So basically the idea is that by going through cycles of eating and not eating,
Okay.
you give your body a break,
Yeah.
especially your pancreas.
Okay.
So Professor James Miller from Stanford,
Okay.
he said that even just a 12-hour overnight fast
Yeah.
can make a noticeable difference in your fasting glucose levels.
Wow. Okay, so it's not like you have to starve yourself all the time.
No, not at all.
It's more about timing your meals strategically.
Right, exactly. It's
Yeah.
more about when you eat.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what happens is by extending that period of not eating. Yeah.
Your body can actually become more sensitive to insulin again.
Okay.
So you can kind of reverse some of that insulin resistance.
Which is what we want.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool approach.
Okay, so we've talked about diet.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about intermittent fasting.
Yep.
Now let's move on to physical activity,
All right.
which, we all know is important for
Yeah, for overall health.
Yeah, but it turns out it also has a really big impact on blood sugar.
It does.
So tell me a little bit about why that is.
So exercise is like a cornerstone of blood sugar management
Okay.
because it helps our bodies use glucose better.
Okay.
And it does that in a few different ways.
So it's not just about burning calories in the moment.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's really about improving how our bodies handle glucose.
Okay, I like that. So let's break down some of the different types of exercise
Okay.
that we talked about and all the stuff that you sent me.
Right.
And resistance training came up quite a bit.
It did, yeah. So why is that so beneficial for blood sugar?
So Dr. Robert Taylor, who's an exercise physiologist,
Okay.
he said something really interesting.
Okay. What did you say?
He called muscle tissue a glucose reservoir.
A glucose reservoir.
A glucose reservoir. So basically, think of your muscles as extra storage tanks
Okay.
for glucose.
I like that visual.
Yeah. So when you build muscle through resistance training,
Okay.
like lifting weights or using resistance bands,
Right.
you're actually increasing your body's ability to remove glucose from your blood.
Oh, wow. So you're actually
You're building those storage tanks.
you're building the storage tanks.
Yeah. And there have been studies showing that people can improve their insulin sensitivity
Yeah.
by up to 48%
Wow.
just by doing resistance training twice a week.
That's insane.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
So building muscle isn't just about strength.
Right.
It's about directly impacting how your body processes sugar.
Yeah, and that's so important for everyone listening to remember. Okay, so what about something a little less intense?
Okay.
Like just going for a walk after you eat?
Yeah, even something as simple as that
Yeah.
can make a big difference.
Oh,
There was a study published in Diabetes Care,
okay.
and they found that just a 10-minute walk after a meal
Yeah,
can lower those post-meal blood sugar spikes by about 22%.
that's amazing just from walking.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And Dr. Lisa Wong, who's a diabetologist,
Oh,
she explained that this is because when you move,
yeah.
your muscle cells have these things called glucose transporters,
Okay.
which are like tiny doors that open up
Yeah.
and let the sugar in your blood enter your muscles
Okay.
to be used for energy.
So it's like you're using that energy from your food to help regulate your blood sugar.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's like a win-win.
Yeah, okay. That's a really great tip.
It's easy to do, too.
It is, yeah. Just take a walk after you eat.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there's HIIT,
Yes, high-intensity interval training.
which sounds a little more intense.
It is a little more intense,
Yeah.
but the research is really promising.
Okay.
There was a meta-analysis,
Okay.
which basically combined data from a bunch of different studies,
Yeah.
and they found that HIIT was actually more effective than moderate exercise
Really?
at improving glucose metabolism.
Wow, okay.
And the cool thing is that the benefits can last for up to 72 hours.
Wow. So those little bursts of intense activity,
Yeah,
they really do make a difference.
they really do.
Okay, so we've covered diet,
Uh-huh.
we've covered exercise.
Yeah.
Let's move on to something that I think sometimes gets overlooked, but is super important,
What's that?
and that is stress management
Yes.
and getting enough sleep.
Huge.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all connected.
It really is.
Our mental and physical health and our blood sugar.
They're all linked.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
So Dr. Thomas Wilson, who's a neuroendocrinologist,
Okay.
he explained that when we're stressed out, our bodies release a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol actually raises our blood sugar levels.
Okay, so stress is like directly...
It directly impacts your blood sugar.
Yeah.
And then when we don't get enough sleep,
Yeah.
it messes with the hormones that control our appetite.
Okay.
And it also makes our bodies less sensitive to insulin.
So it's like a double whammy.
It's like a 1-2 punch.
Not good.
Not good.
And there's actually research on this too, right?
There is, yeah.
Hard evidence that shows that.
So there was a study from the University of Chicago,
Yeah.
and they found that just 3 nights of not getting enough sleep
Wow.
can reduce your insulin sensitivity by over 25%.
That's crazy. Just 3 nights?
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It just shows how important sleep is.
Yeah. So what are some things that we can do
Okay.
to manage our stress
Yeah.
and get better sleep?
So there are a few key strategies
Right.
that were highlighted in the research you sent.
Yeah.
So mindfulness meditation has shown some really good results.
Yeah.
In fact, one study found that it could lower fasting blood glucose
Yeah.
by almost 9 milligrams per deciliter.
Wow. Okay, that's significant.
Yeah, and yoga's another great option.
Yeah.
There have been tons of studies
Yeah.
linking yoga to lower HbA1c levels.
So that's good for blood sugar and also just like overall relaxation.
Exactly.
Wow.
I love it. And of course, getting enough sleep
Yes.
is crucial.
Yeah. How much should we be aiming for?
Most adults need between 7 and 9 hours
Okay.
of quality sleep every night.
Right.
And it's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality too.
It's got to be restful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so these are all things that are good for blood sugar,
Mm-hmm.
but also just good for our overall health
Yeah, for sure.
and well-being.
It's a holistic approach.
I love that. Okay. So now let's talk about the last piece of the puzzle,
Right.
which is strategic supplementation.
Okay.
And in particular, we're going to talk about GlucoTrust. So we've talked about all these amazing lifestyle changes
Right.
that we can make,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes we might need a little extra support.
Yeah, sometimes those lifestyle changes aren't quite enough.
Right.
Or you just want an extra boost.
Yeah, and that's where supplements can come in.
Exactly.
And GlucoTrust is one that specifically targets blood sugar.
It does, yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
So GlucoTrust is a supplement that has a blend of ingredients
Okay.
that have been studied for their effects on glucose metabolism.
Okay, let's break down some of the key ingredients.
Okay.
So the first one that I saw was Gymnema sylvestre.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So Gymnema sylvestre is an herb that's been used in traditional medicine for a long time.
Okay.
And Dr. Amanda Harris, who's an integrative medicine specialist,
Okay.
she explained that it has compounds in it
Yeah.
that might help to block sugar absorption
Oh, wow.
in your digestive tract.
So it's like stopping the sugar from getting into your bloodstream in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty amazing.
And it might also help your pancreas make more insulin.
So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, it's like attacking the problem from both sides.
I like that.
And there's some research to suggest
Yeah.
that these mechanisms could really improve blood sugar control.
Okay, that's exciting.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so the next ingredient is biotin,
Yes.
which is a B vitamin.
Right.
We usually hear about that in terms of like hair and nails.
Yeah, a lot of people associate it with that.
Yeah, but it also plays a role in glucose metabolism, right?
It does, yeah.
Tell me about that.
So biotin is essential for how our bodies process glucose.
Okay.
And the research suggests it might improve blood sugar control
Yeah?
by making our cells more sensitive to insulin
Okay.
and by supporting those enzymes that are involved in breaking down glucose.
Gotcha. So it's like helping everything run smoothly.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
making sure the machinery is working properly.
Yeah, I like that.
And then there's chromium,
Yes.
which is a trace mineral.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Wilson was talking about this one. He said that chromium is super important
Yeah.
for helping insulin work effectively.
Okay.
And he pointed out that a lot of people in Western countries don't get enough chromium in their diets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so supplementing with it
Yeah.
might be a good idea.
Okay, so it's about making sure you have enough
Exactly.
to help that insulin do its job.
Yes.
Okay, I like
Yeah.
that.
And the last ingredient in GlucoTrust is licorice root.
Okay, licorice root, I usually think of like candy.
Yeah, most people do.
Yeah.
But it actually has some health benefits too.
It does.
Yeah, there are some studies suggesting that licorice root
Yeah.
could help improve insulin sensitivity and also reduce inflammation,
Oh, wow.
which can be a problem when your blood sugar's out of whack.
So it's like it's calming things down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so it sounds like GlucoTrust has a lot of great ingredients,
It does.
but it's important to remember
Yes.
that supplements are not a magic bullet.
No, they're not.
And Dr. Harris made a really good point about this.
What did she say?
She said that supplements should complement,
Yes.
not replace,
Absolutely.
lifestyle changes
Yeah.
and medical treatment.
So true.
So it's like it's an extra layer of support,
it is.
but you still got to do the work
You still got to do the
with
work.
your diet and your
Yeah.
exercise
And managing your stress and sleep.
and everything else.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so we've talked about all these individual strategies.
Mhm.
Now, how do we put it all together?
Yeah. How do we approach this in a holistic way?
Yeah, what's the most effective way to manage blood sugar naturally?
So the key takeaway here
Okay.
is that combining multiple approaches
Yeah.
is the best way to get lasting results.
So it's not just about doing one thing.
No, it's about doing all the things.
Okay.
Dr. Reynolds actually had a really great step-by-step plan.
Okay. I love step-by-step plans.
Yeah, me too.
Lay it on me.
All right, so she said start with those dietary modifications we talked about.
Okay.
Just focus on whole, unprocessed foods.
Right.
Reduce those refined carbs.
Yeah.
Make sure you're getting healthy fats and lean protein with your meals.
Yeah.
Then incorporate both aerobic exercise,
Okay.
like brisk walking or cycling,
Mm-hmm.
and resistance training into your routine.
So we need both.
Yeah, you need both.
Okay.
And then don't forget about stress management and sleep.
Yes, those are so important.
They are.
And then if you need it, you can consider a targeted supplement.
Sure.
Okay.
Like GlucoTrust.
Like GlucoTrust.
Exactly. And she also said it's super important to monitor your blood sugar regularly.
Yeah.
So you can see how you're doing.
To track your progress
Exactly.
and work with your doctor to adjust your medications if needed.
Right. Because sometimes those medications might need to be tweaked.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is.
Okay, so it sounds like it's really a multifaceted approach.
It is.
That's the most effective.
Yeah. And Dr. Chen made a really good point about this.
Okay, what did he say?
He said that one of the most encouraging things about these natural approaches is that they often have what's called cumulative and synergistic benefits.
Okay, what does that mean?
So basically it means that the combined effect
Yeah.
of doing all those things,
Yeah.
the good diet, the exercise, the stress management, the sleep, the supplements, it's often greater than the sum of its parts.
Oh, wow, I like that.
Yeah, so they all work together to create this even bigger positive impact.
That's really cool. Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of potential here
There is.
with these natural approaches.
Then there are some important things to keep in mind.
Okay, what are they?
So Dr. Vasquez brought up a really good point.
Okay.
She said that these natural approaches tend to be most effective
Yeah.
when they're implemented early on.
Okay, so like before there's been a lot of damage.
Yeah, before significant damage to the pancreas.
Okay, so it's like catching it early.
Exactly. It's easier to help the body regain balance
Right.
in those earlier stages.
Okay, that makes sense.
And another really crucial point
Yeah.
is that if you are taking any medication for diabetes,
Yeah.
you absolutely have to talk to your doctor
Yeah.
before making any big changes.
Yeah. That's so important. Why is that so important?
Because these changes can really impact your blood sugar levels,
Right.
and you might need to adjust your medication dosage
Okay.
to prevent your blood sugar from going too low.
Right, because that can be dangerous too.
It can be very dangerous. So it's really important to work with your doctor to make sure everything is safe.
Okay, so these natural strategies should always be seen as working with,
Yes,
not against.
absolutely.
It's a team effort.
And all the experts that we've talked about today.
Mm-hmm. They were really clear about that.
So to sum it all up,
Yeah.
it sounds like natural approaches are really promising
They are.
for managing blood sugar, especially for people with prediabetes
Okay.
or early stage type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
Because in some cases, they might even be able to reduce the need for medication
Oh, wow.
or even reverse the condition.
That's incredible.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
And by combining those lifestyle modifications
Hmm.
with strategic supplementation,
Yeah.
like GlucoTrust,
Like GlucoTrust, people can really take control of their blood sugar
that improve their overall health.
and well-being.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so important to remember that these natural approaches
Yeah.
aren't just about treating symptoms.
Right.
They're about getting to the root cause.
They're about supporting your body's natural ability to regulate blood sugar.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a long-term perspective.
So as you're listening to this,
Yeah.
I want you to think about
Okay.
all the things we've talked about.
Yeah.
Your diet, your exercise, your stress, your sleep.
And those targeted nutrients?
What's one small change that you can make today
to
start improving your blood sugar balance?
That's a great question.
And what other questions do you have
Mm-hmm.
about your own personal health journey?
Yeah.
And as always, please talk to your doctor
Yes.
before making any big changes.
Especially if you're on medication.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.